Catch it. What'll it be, gentlemen?
I don't know. What do you want to eat, Al? I don't know what I want to eat. And I'll have the roast pork tenderloin with the applesauce and mashed potatoes.
That's not ready yet.
And what's it on the card for?
Well, that's on the dinner. We'll have that at 6 o'clock. The clock is 10 minutes fast. The dinner isn't ready yet.
Never mind the clock. What have you got to eat?
Well, I can give you any kind of sandwiches, bacon and eggs, liver and bacon, ham and eggs, steaks.
I'll take the chicken croquettes with the cream sauce, the green peas, and the mashed potatoes.
That's on the dinner, too.
Everything we want's on the dinner. That's the way you work it, huh?
I can give you ham and eggs, bacon and eggs, liver and bacon.
Ham and eggs. Give me bacon and eggs.
One ham and bacon and.
Coming up.
You got anything to drink?
I can give you soda, beer, ginger ale.
I said, have you got anything to drink?
No.
This is a hot town. What do you call it?
Brentwood.
Ever hear of Brentwood? What do you do here nights? They eat for dinner. They all come here and eat the big dinner.
That's right.
You're a pretty bright boy, aren't you?
Sure.
Well, you're not, is he, Al? He's dumb. Hey, you. What's your name?
Adams? Nick Adams.
Another bright boy. Town's full of bright boys.
One ham and one bacon and.
Which one is yours?
Don't you remember, bright boy? What are you laughing at?
Nothing.
You see something funny?
No.
Then don't laugh.
All right.
He thinks it's all right. Oh, he's a thinker. What's the bright boy's name down the counter? I forget.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of ColoniaBook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
We are very excited. It is summertime. I am wearing my rainbow shirt because even though it's mid-July, it's Pride weekend here in San Diego. And the rainbows are out in force. I think the parade is the parade today? I think the parade might be today. Yeah. And it's always like it's because we're one of the later Pride celebrations in the country. So it's a big deal here. It's days. Like people have been celebrating, like as soon as it turned July, we're like everybody descended on San Diego. It's been like super fun. It's nice. It helps alleviate the drag of the heat.
Now, we just had the SAG at AFTRA. All these actors are going on strike, and they just said that they're not going to appear at Comic-Con. When does that happen by you?
So Comic-Con is, I think it's next weekend.
Mm.
It's this coming weekend or the weekend after that. It's soon. It's very soon. Soon enough that people next week will start coming down to San Diego for that. They've been coming right now for Pride, but then those folks will leave and some probably will stay. And then the Comic-Con folks will come down. Yeah. Pride's a little late, even for us. This is a little late this year. It's not usually this close to Comic-Con, but we'll see how that goes. I'm really intrigued by how that's all going to play out.
Because the actors are not allowed to do any promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can do stuff in the past, but nothing that's in production or nothing that's coming out. So that'll be really interesting.
It's a lot of money. Comic-Con here. Let's see what the dates are. July 20th to the 23rd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so next weekend.
Yeah. It's huge business here. It's like, Times Square on New Year's Eve for 3 days. And
people in costumes.
I think people in costumes all over the county. Like you'll see people in costumes like really far away from the convention center, but they maybe stopped there earlier that day and they just kept the costume on. I'm curious to see how that all goes down. I think this is going to be, especially now that the actors have joined.
Yes.
And this is going to be like the first kind of test of the power of that solidarity to see like if how that impacts all of the marketing that goes on at Comic-Con. Yeah, we'll see.
It's the first time actors and writers have done this together since, I believe, 1960.
Yeah, it's been at least 60 years.
And I think Ronald Reagan was the president of the
That he was.
SAG.
Ironically, right?
Yeah. Well, we should say also because Burt Lancaster, turns out he was very much into being social causes and labor and that kind of thing. So I think this is, I don't know if we haven't talked about Burt Lancaster since we talked about Field of Dreams. So this is going to be
right. We haven't done anything. I
know,
can't
and he's
believe
had
that,
so
but
many
it's
movies.
true.
Yes.
And he's had a lot of movies that have been adapted from books too.
Yeah.
So but here, anyway, but we're going to have a great one that we're talking about today. We have a great idea for next week as well. Like we have some really cool ideas that our listeners have suggested. If you have suggestions, we've been trying to do a brand new episode every single week, and you've got ideas, we're sure you do. We would like to hear them. If you want to make those suggestions, meet other listeners of this podcast, interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. All the episodes are posted there, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. It's Book versus Movie Podcast Group, Book vs Movie Podcast Group, excuse me. And Thaddeus was kind enough to put 2 posts at the very top. One is ideas. It's a running list of ideas. And the other list is what we've already covered. But you can also just join us and then pop it in there like, hey, I saw this and you should cover that. Somebody just did that this last week. We'll tell you at the end of the show what we're going to be covering next. We're on Twitter, as long as that exists, at Book versus a Movie. I'm working on putting us on Threads next week, so stay tuned for that. I think I can do it. Instagram, great place to follow us. Book versus a Movie, spell that all out. And we have an old-timey email if you want to reach us that way. It's Book versus Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. And we also have stickers if you would like some stickers. Just give us your address and we'll drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoyed the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. We've been doing the show now for 9 years. It's going to be 10 years next year. So we're putting all the episodes from 2020 and then previous to that are now on the Patreon wall. We're going to be releasing some more in the next few weeks. Those will be The Stepford Wives, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Turn of the Screw, Psycho, and The Silence of the Lambs. Very popular episodes. They are now on our Patreon wall. We'll be releasing them. We have a couple of very affordable options. And seriously, we use it just to buy books and movies and pay for the services, but also the software and everything for hosting the podcast. And so all of you who support us there, thank you so very much. We really, really appreciate it. But if money is tight, we understand. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get your podcast, 5 stars, and Apple Podcasts would be amazing. But Spotify now, you can leave your notes there. We'd really appreciate it. So thank you.
And just to be clear, we have a few little ground rules if you are making suggestions. One that comes up all the time is fast times, which we would love to do fast times. You have no idea how much, from the very beginning, we have wanted to do fast times.
From the very first time, yes.
But you just try and get you a copy of that book. It will set you back.
It's like $70, I think, on
at
eBay.
Least.
Yeah.
At least. So these are the rules because we want everybody, including ourselves, to have access to all of the material that we're going to be talking about on this show. And we're not just limited to books. It's called Book versus Movie, but we will consider any movie that's been adapted from any kind of literary source, even a play or a song or a magazine article, as long as it has a literary source, it's on the table for us. It just has to be something that everybody can get their hands on easily without breaking the bank. Mm-hmm. And the movie has to be streaming because, not everybody has the neighborhood movie house anymore. So it has to be something, again, that everybody can easily get themselves connected to and to be able to see and participate in the conversation.
Correct.
So with that, we're going to be talking about, here's another... Here's another disclaimer. We're not literature majors. We're not film majors. We've been at this for almost 10 years. So, we're not complete noobs. But, sometimes we talk about an author or a filmmaker or a film star, somebody who is like the subject of tremendous scholarship. And in this case of today's book and movie, we've got a number of people that, we could do a whole series, we could do a whole podcast just on that one person involved in this this conversation today. So we're just going to be hitting the broad strokes. Please do not use this podcast for your Hemingway book club book report for high school. We know he got a Nobel Prize. Like, the man is a giant. We don't have all day. So we're gonna do our best and get to this movie and this story, but we do have to talk about Mr. Ernest Hemingway.
Where do we begin? Ernest Miller Hemingway, I guess we'll say he was born Oak Park, Illinois. We have a lot of readers, by the way, that wrote in and talked about the places where he's a big deal. There's a house in Florida. He's from Illinois. He is in Ketchum, Idaho, was where he died. Born July 21st, 1899. Some of his most famous works, The Sun Also Rises, A Farewell to Arms, For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Old Man and the Sea. This was on all of my literature when I was in high school and college, everything.
Oh, yeah. Any American student who can graduate high school has read Hemingway. I mean, it's something that is, even in his lifetime, he was
a big deal.
Revered. Yeah, he was a very, very big deal. And he's part of that lost generation, lived in Paris, knew Gertrude Stein, was part of her salon, was friends with like Fitzgerald and Sherwood Anderson. And I mean, just the giants of American literature. And he just had, as I was going over his life, because I've looked at his bio a number of times, although we've never covered him on this show.
Right. It's the first time.
It's amazing. But let me just say, like, the thing that kind of jumped out at me this time, this guy, how many accidents and injuries did he survive? I mean, it's ludicrous, the number of physical, injury and accident that befell this man. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Right.
Just it's like somebody's making it up. You can't believe what this guy has been through. The number of injuries and attacks and assaults and plane crashes, plural, car accidents. Many. I lost count of the car accidents. Yeah.
He served,
and the things like amazing.
Yeah, he served in World War I. That informed a lot of his personality and what he wrote about. What about, what is life about? What do you fight for? What do countries fight about? Like Margos said, he was a part of the lost generation in the 1920s. I mean, very interesting time to be alive. He saw everything happen within his lifetime. He's won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1953, won the Pulitzer Prize in Literature, the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954. He was married several times. He was also known, first of all, if you look young Ernest Hemingway in Google Images, he was very handsome. He was hot.
Yeah, hold the phone. Yeah, right. Just give yourself a minute.
You're going to fan yourself. He was very, very handsome. He attracted the ladies. Like I said, he's married several times. He has several grandchildren and now great grandchildren, and they were all very talented as well. But he was also known for hunting. He saw himself as a man's man. That was very important.
Very
to him.
Butch. Yes.
Very aggro.
And also, had an interest in writing from a very young age. And as he was sort of a big strapping, I mean, he is like machismo embodied. And, but as a young man, he was kind of shy and sensitive and very, interested in becoming a writer, and became a journalist and did a lot of war correspondence. So in addition to just actually serving, like he was an ambulance driver in World War I, which is,
very
as we
dangerous.
talked about, a devastating war. The brutality of that war was on a scale that the world had never seen. That's why it was called the war to end all wars. But his journalism, took him into, very, very dangerous scenarios. He covered the Spanish Civil War, of course, World War II. He was somebody who just was, as they say, a man of action.
Yes.
An adventurer, if you will. Very dangerous situations that he would put himself into to get a story, in addition to writing his own fiction. And the thing about Hemingway in his fiction is the style that he writes is at the time unique to him. Like, this is a brand new, very American way of looking at the world. His sentence structure is very sparse, very minimalist compared to the other writers in his contemporaries at the time. If you look at Hemingway's writing versus Fitzgerald, for example, you can see how different their styles are, and yet without he doesn't go on and on to like describing a place or describing what the person looks like or all of that. And yet somehow he manages to convey all of their kind of inner life and inner working. He's a brilliant writer. Nobody's questioning that.
my favorite English instructor said that he loved Hemingway for his economy of words. Like, he wasn't going to write like a 500-page book and like 100 pages of description, and that's not what he did. I would say like his dialogue isn't my favorite, and it's like For Whom the Bell Tolls. There's some of them where I was like, ooh, but like Margos said, he's a genius. Like, who am I to say that he's not? But he was a very troubled man. He had issues with depression. I'm sure some of that was from his war experiences as well. He'd seen a lot in his years. When he died, he was only 61 when he died by suicide. But people remember him
and
more
his
for the way he lived.
father also he was the son of, so it's a lot. It's a lot.
And it's family members and his granddaughters, and there's a lot. There is, but it's saying to his work that people do remember more for how he lived versus how he died, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, I had never gone through his life and seen like the events, like I said, all of this like car accident, plane crash, fell out of this or that, it was like,
it's like
one thing after. Seriously, yeah.
Same thing, but plane crashes and lots of horrible things, tremendous
and
things that happen.
And then on top of that, he's obviously dealing with some mental health issues for which he actively, I mean, to his credit, to which he actively sought treatment. He really did try, from what I saw, to get help and try to manage his mental health. But this was at a time in that field, not as developed as it is now. And he had a lot of electroshock therapy, but he really was trying to find treatment for all his various ailments of every nature, which I think I've rather admired about him, that he didn't just kind of like try to power through and let it go. Like with everything, he did try always to get help and so that he could heal from his many, many, many injuries.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we're talking about this story today, and it's a short story, and it appeared in Scribner's magazine in 1927. I loved it, by the way.
It's really good. It's extremely short.
Right.
Okay.
16 pages.
And I read it. I didn't want to know anything about it before I read it. Mm-hmm. So I purposely just went in cold before I looked anything up about it. I just looked up enough to find it. Mm-hmm. And it's super good. And again, a very brief, you could read it while you're waiting at the waiting room at the doctor's office. Like, it's that short. It takes place in Brentwood in Los Angeles. in the 1920s. We're in 1920s Los Angeles. So Brentwood is not.
No, sorry.
Oh, no, New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey. It's in the movie, but no, in the story, it's actually Illinois.
Oh, see, well, there, I got that all wrong.
Yeah.
But I know it's Brentwood. Isn't it Brentwood?
It's Brentwood, New Jersey. I thought it was Brentwood, California when they said the movie, and then.
So did I.
Yeah, and then I had to go back and watch it again.
And then I was
watched
like,
this movie twice, by the way.
New Jersey now? Well, we'll get to why we both were confused by that. But anyway, we're in this small town in a diner. The proprietor, it's between the lunch shift and the dinner shift. Mm-hmm. We don't get a lot of, again, he's not going to go into detail about what the diner looks like. What were the booths made out of? He just basically like, hey, we're in a diner. This is the guy that owns it. He's between the two shifts, and these two guys walk in.
And they're demanding dinner. First, they're asking for dinner, and he's explaining to them, like, now it's in between shifts. You can't have that, but I can get you lunch, sandwiches. And the guys these two men are immediately aggro about it, and they call him smart boy, and he's like an older man, and they're talking to him, and they're saying, why can't we get this now? And who, playing the boss. And there's a person named Nick Adams, who's a patron there. And Nick Adams is somebody apparently that Hemingway put in many of his short stories. So this is someone that's like, I guess
he's
Hemingway
like the
universe.
Hemingway stand-in. He's kind of his sort of autobiographical guy that shows up in Hemingway's work from time to time. So Nick, he's like the everyman. Nick Adams is there, and these two men they have this really rather amusing back and forth with the I will say in this story I did enjoy the dialogue very much.
Oh yeah.
They have this back and forth with the owner about quibbling about the menu. The owner saying like, I simply do not have available yet. It's like basically the delivery has not come of the food that you're requesting because it's before the dinner hour. I can make you this, I can make you that. And they're like, no, we want this. We want the dinner. And back and forth. And finally the owner convinces the men to take like an order of bacon and eggs and ham and eggs. And there's this whole thing about they get the meal, he serves them, and they start eating. And the owner notices that both the men are eating their bacon and eggs and ham and eggs with these like leather gloves on for some reason. Like that's weird.
They're behaving strangely.
They're a little weird.
And menacingly.
They're menacing looking just physically anyway, but they're eating with their like, take your gloves off, but they're not taking their gloves off. And the owner that gets caught like sort of staring at their gloves, and then they have a little bit more back and forth. And the guys come right out and say, oh, no, they also make the owner bring the cook out. Now, warning, they do use the N-word here because the cook is black. It is not nice. Although I will say it's meant to not be nice. It's meant to be that these men are using it as a slur to demean the cook
because they know his name, or they're introduced to his name, but they call him the N-word. And we have to say also, this is 100 years ago that this was written. So
correct. So they also like berate the cook, and somehow it comes out like, so why are you guys here? And these two men just come right plain out and go, oh, we're here to kill Mr. What's his name? Johnson? What's his name? Ole
Anderson.
Anderson. We're here to kill Ole Anderson. We understand he eats here every night at 6. Is that correct? And they were like, yeah, he does come here every night at 6.
As a matter of fact,
you're here to kill him, huh? Okay. I mean, they just come right out and say it, and their faces aren't obscured or anything. But like something's going on that these men feel perfectly comfortable just letting everybody know, like, oh yeah, we're here to kill the guy. And they said, well, when does, he normally comes in at 6, but we know that if he doesn't show up by 6, he doesn't show up at all. He's either here before 6 or he's not here that night. And they tell him, Nick tells them that the proprietor and the cook, they all vouch for like, yeah, if the Swede, they call him the Swede, the Swede doesn't show up by 6, then you forget about it. He's not going to be here. And so they go, well, we'll just see about that. And they tie up Nick and they tie up the cook and they make the owner stay out with them. So it looks like the diner is open. Meanwhile, they're turning people away from the door. The owner's like, we're out of food. I'm like,
No
the cook is
yet.
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, wow, why are you even open? And people are all mad about it. And sure enough, yeah, the Swede does not show up. And the guys, the killers are like, well, okay, well, we're gonna find him and we're gonna kill him. Don't you worry about it. And they leave. And they're like not at all concerned that everybody has seen their face. Like I immediately thought like, oh, well, they're not going to let these men live. I mean, that's what I really thought was going to happen, but that's not what happens. They do not care about these men. They don't care that these men know why they're there. They don't care that the men know that these are killers. They know full well these guys could go to the police. They do not care. What's that about, right? So they leave. The owner runs into the kitchen. He unties the cook. He unties Nick. He says, Nick, you know the Swede. You know where he lives. You got to go warn him because, this guy's their buddy. You got to go tell him, like, these guys, he's got to know. And maybe we need to tell the police. Maybe we got to tell the cops. And Nick's like, yeah, you're right. But where should I go first? Well, I'll go warn the Swede first. And so he goes to a boarding house where the Swede lives. Ole, and somehow it comes up that Ole used to be a boxer.
Yes,
it's just briefly mentioned that Ole used to be a boxer. So anyway, I guess that we know that he's like a big guy, who can hold his own. I think is what we're supposed to get from that. Tiny again, Hemingway does not go on about things. It's a little tidbit he drops in there, and you, the reader, have to kind of like put it in your little memory bank, right? Mm-hmm. So Nick shows up. He gets the landlady to let him in. There's Ole. He's just lying there. He's like, yeah, I don't feel well, so I didn't show up for dinner. Sorry about that. And Nick says, hey, I'm sorry. It's good you didn't show up. These guys came in and they just full out said they're gonna kill you. And Nick and Ole, the Swede, goes like, oh, okay. And Nick's like, they tied up me and the cook. They really are gonna kill you. Here's what they look like. And Ole goes, yeah, I don't care what they look like. And he's like, but dude, they said they're going to kill you. And he's like, okay. He's like, but I'm going to get the police. Don't worry. I'm going to get the police. He's like, no, don't bother going to the police. They're going to find me. They're going to find me. And he kind of like just turns around, turns his back on the guy or something. He never gets out of bed. And Nick is like, okay. And he leaves. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, he goes back, and the owner is like has already forgotten about like everything that's happened, and then Nick decides to leave because he doesn't know he's gonna skip town because he's like, I don't know what this is about. I don't want any part of it. I don't. Yeah, exactly.
I think I need to leave town for a while. Yeah, I mean that's it. That's it. Yeah. We never learn who the killers are, why they want to kill him. Did they kill him? How did they kill him? Nothing. And it's fascinating. It's a really fun story. It's very cool. I super enjoyed it. It's very intriguing. And it's sort of like how you have these like prompts for writers, or journal prompt. It's sort of like a movie prompt. Here's the setup. These killers show up and full out say they're going to kill this guy, and the guy does not care. It kind of reminded me when we were talking about the one with the tennis player with Frolic Granger.
Oh, Strangers on a Train.
Strangers on a Train. It reminded me of the end of that book where the main character goes, he thinks he's wronged this man, and that he's led to the death of the guy's his ex, anyway, right. The guy, and the man just like does not care. It's sort of like that. And you do, as a reader, you're like, your mind goes wild. How could you possibly not care? What do you mean? Like, get out of there, dude. They're coming to get you. Don't you want to know what they look like? I mean, but you never find out. And it is a great jumping off point for a movie. Where do you go with that? And as it turns out, there's 2 movie adaptations of this story. The one we're going to talk about today, which is Burt Lancaster, Ava Gardner, classic film noir. And then there's one that was made in the 1960s, which they call neo-noir. Is that what they call that genre? Where it's sort of like film noir, but with like a 60s pop, post-war overlay. Anyway, the 60s one has Angie Dickinson and Ronald Reagan and John Cassavetes. And the 2 stories have the same elements of the Hemingway story, but they take them in they take place in totally different worlds.
Oh, interesting.
So they're very, very different movies from each other. They both have the element of these killers show up, they full out say, I'm going to kill this guy. And the guy doesn't care. And then we have the sort of the flashback to what the guy did and why he's not going to run from these killers. So, but we're going to be talking about the noir version. You and I were just saying we hadn't ever seen it before. It is spectacular on every level.
It's pretty great.
Many twists and turns. You do have to kind of, we both, when we watched it, would go back and kind of like, wait, what? Where are we now? Because it moves around a lot. The locations change. The new characters come in. Like as the thing progresses, you get these more and more characters who are important to the story who show up and they take the story in another direction, and it's told using, as often happens in a noir film, and we've discussed this, Laura. It's a sort of a trope of noir films to tell the story in a flashback. Sometimes it works super great, sometimes not so great. I think this is one of the best ones I've ever seen.
It's fantastic. Why don't we play the original trailer, and then we'll get into the story.
Lately. Hey! Any objections? Yeah.
You touch me and you won't live till morning.
You're not meeting them tomorrow.
Aren't I, Swede?
Most of them turned out to be unhealthy. The farmer died from natural causes. The Swede and Blinky Franklin were both killed. You know who else was in the gang? You were. Reach for that and I'll kick your brains out.
So this is 1946. Robert Shodmak, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is the director. The screenplay. So the screenplay was bought for like $40,000 for Ernest Hemingway, and the script was worked on by John Huston, of all people, who wasn't.
You can tell.
Credit. Yes.
Yeah, you can totally tell.
There's some really smart things happening here, and Anthony Vaylor is the person who's actually named as the screenwriter, but John Huston really put a lot of work into this. It's the first starring role. It's the first movie role for Burt Lancaster, which is incredible to me because And he's like 31 or 32. He had served he just started very late in life, basically. Like he just kind of later on in his life, he found himself. Ava Gardner had appeared in 30 movies before this. This was her first co-starring role. She's so beautiful. She's so great.
She's so gorgeous.
I mean,
she's so beautiful. Like you have to, like when you first that first shot of her, and it's pretty far in. I kept thinking like, okay, when's Ava Gardner going to show up? When's she going to show up?
Right.
And when she finally shows up, and that must have been because she, as you say, she was a huge star already by the time this movie is made. And so I'm sure the audience too was like, well, where's Ava Gardner? Like you said, Ava Gardner was going to be in this movie. Where is she? When it takes your breath away. She's so pretty. Oh my God. It's amazing.
Insanely beautiful. I think she's from North Carolina. She's from the South. She had been in Hollywood for a couple of years. She's 23 years old when she's doing this part. We also have Albert Decker, Sam Levine, and Edmond O'Brien in our cast. It opens up the same way. The first 10 or 15 minutes is just like the short story. So you show up, it's at the diner.
It's pretty much verbatim the story. Yeah.
And like the dialogue about the chicken and liver with the chicken and eggs, or have the eggs and bacon. No, we don't have anything right now. And they're very aggressive, looking and and immediately, and they boss around without any gun. They don't have a gun on them that I can see. Like they don't ever take a gun out or anything, but they're so threatening. They just know.
But they do say we're here to kill a guy.
Yeah.
So you can only imagine okay, so they have means to do that somehow. So I'm going to do what they say.
And so because
who does that?
It's bizarre. It's a great way to start it though, because we're immediately like, well, what's going on in this Brentwood, New Jersey place? It's kind of terrifying. Nick goes over to see the Swede, and the Swede says, yep, that's Burt Lancaster. I kind of thought that would happen.
Swede, I was over at Henry's. A couple of guys came in and tied up me and the cook. They shoved us in the kitchen. They said they were going to shoot you when you came in to supper. Well, George thought I ought to come over and tell you.
There's nothing I can do about it.
I can tell you what they look like.
I don't want to know what they're like. Thanks for coming.
Don't you want me to go and see the police?
No. That wouldn't do any good.
Isn't there something I could do?
There ain't anything to do.
Couldn't you get out of town?
No. I'm through with all that running around.
Why do they want to kill you?
I did something wrong. Once. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. It's all right.
Thanks for warning me, buddy, but save yourself. Don't worry about me. And then we go to, his name is Ole Anderson in the movie.
So yes, so I don't know. It's not really explained. I mean, we sort of guess the men in the diner at the beginning of the movie are looking for a man named Pete Lund.
Mm-hmm.
And they say he's a former boxer, but then we learn kind of as the thing goes on that Pete Lund is an alias. And his real name is Ole Anderson, which makes sense because that's a Swedish name. Pete Lund is maybe it's Swedish, but anyway, everybody calls him the Swede. And, but we don't know why. Like, why did he change his name? We're not entirely sure. And it's never really completely explained, but presumably he wants to leave part of his life behind. We find out much later on what that's about, but at first you're like, oh, okay, he's got an alias, but all right. So yeah, his real name is Ole Anderson. Oh, but before that, I'm sorry. So Nick goes to the Swede, and just like Margot said in the story, it's like, hey, this guy's going to kill you. He's like, yeah, thanks, buddy. That's fine. Just get out of here before something happens to you. And he says, well, why do they want to kill you? This is not in the story at all. He says, why do they want to kill you? And Burt Lancaster says, because I did something wrong once, something like that. And then it's like, and at the passage of time, the murder has happened. So now that we know that we don't see the murder. Do we see the murder?
You do. Yeah. They shoot at him.
We see them come in and they shoot at him. Right. And so now he's been murdered. Hand goes up. We see his hand and drops lifeless. Super well done.
Really
well done. Lighting in this movie, you could just watch it with the sound off. The lighting is so beautiful in this movie. The police and the lawyers are going through the few possessions that were in this guy. He lives in a boarding house that were in his room, and they discover, oh, this guy was a former boxer named Ole Anderson. He's not really Pete Lund. Oh, this is weird. He's left. He's got a life insurance policy for $2,500. I don't know how much that is in that 1947. He's left a life insurance policy bequeathing everything, $2,500 to this, I forget what her name was, but this woman who works at a hotel.
Right.
And they go, okay, well, let's go meet the woman. Like that's odd. He has an alias and we're the insurance company. So we got to go, time to go, tell her she's the beneficiary. Maybe she's his sister or something. And they go to the hotel, tell the woman, like, Mr. Lund has left you, as the beneficiary. We're sorry that, you for your loss. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about or who that is. And they're like, Mr. Pete Lund. And she's like, and they go, okay, well, how about, maybe you knew him by his name, Ole Anderson. And she's like, no. And they show her a photo from his, the notice of the murder in the paper. And she goes, oh, that guy? Oh, he was here for like a couple of days. He left all his money to me? Huh, that's odd. And they were like, well, what was your interaction with him? And she's older than him. Like she's she's like the maid in the hotel. And she says, she's like, oh, I don't know if I should say. She's Irish. And they said, well, just, he's dead. And we're just trying to make sure that, justice is served. And we're trying, maybe you can help us find who killed him. And she goes, okay. She says, oh, and you're sure it was murder? And he's like, yeah, we're sure it was murder. She goes, oh, I'm so relieved because that means he'll get into heaven is basically what she says.
Right.
Because she's Irish. She is Catholic. Therefore, suicide is a mortal sin. It was believed that you do not go to heaven if you take your own life. And so he's like, why are you relieved about? Like, why did you think it would be like, we know it was murder, but why did you think it was something else? And so she tells the story that, he was a guest in the hotel. He was there with a woman. And she's going by the room and she hears like a brawl going on in the room. And she opens the door to check and it's just a shambles. And he's by himself. He's ripping the place to shreds and he's drunk and he's crying and he's saying she's gone. And then he throws a chair through the window. He's going to jump out of the window of the hotel. And this little maid stops him. Like he's a huge burly boxer. And somehow she grabs him and keeps him from jumping out of the window. And for
because
that,
of his soul, because she was worried.
And saves his soul because she was worried that he won't go to heaven. And she's begging him not to, and for that, he makes her his sole beneficiary. But what on earth was that about? And so this insurance investigator who was there to just give her the money is now very intrigued about, first of all, why did he, because he knows from Nick what happened, when Nick went to tell the Swede about the killers. So why did this guy not care that these killers were coming to murder him? Why would he leave money to this woman who he doesn't even, he barely knows who she is? okay, she saved his life, but why was he trying to jump out of a window? Like, what does this guy have some kind of a death wish, or like what's going on here? And then we go into, now he's like chasing these thinnest of leads, and his boss at the insurance company is like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, we don't care. Like, this is such small potatoes. Why do you care? And he's like, honestly, I don't know why I care. I just need to find out.
Because it's one mystery after the other, and he's a detective, so he's curious. Like, well, where did he get this money, and why did he wind up in this situation that he's in this boarding house, and he's ready to die for this woman, and he left all this money to this woman who essentially saved his life in the moment. I mean, she definitely extended his life by I don't know how long, but she showed him kindness, and she saw him as a person, and that's why he did that. So then we go back, another flashback, and it's to when he's a boxer, and they're putting the gloves on him, and they're shoving him into the ring, and it's his big chance, and
it's so realistic looking,
very, very realistic looking.
Seconds out. Come on, fella, let's clear the ring. Outside. Fast. Now use your right, Swede. He's wide open. It's the last round. Keep throwing your right. Oh, Swede. Has he got a chance? He's getting murdered. Can't last.
We should say Lancaster was a very physical guy. He started as a gymnast, just like Cary Grant, and was going to go to NYU on a basketball scholarship, and he declined it to join the circus, basically. And that's like, so he could do his own stunts. He could tumble and. Yeah.
He is like just like Cary Grant. He has a real grace about the way that he moves. The boxing scenes are very intense. Convincing. Like, you just like, ugh, it's really good. And he trained, like, he really super trained for this film. He is really boxing. Yeah. So in the course of trying to investigate what's going on and who this man was, the insurance investigator, whose name is Reardon. Oh, that was driving me crazy. His name is Reardon, and he's the insurance investigator. And he just wants to he just wants to know what the story is. Basically, he's just consumed by this story, and he tracks down this cop who had arrested the Swede and put him in jail for like quite a while, like 3 years.
3 years.
And he's like, well, let me go talk to this cop. And it turns out that the cop and the Swede are best friends. They had been friends since they were tiny children. And the cop, his wife, used to date the Swede. So they really knew each other like super, super, super well. And we learn that the Swede had kind of a ups and downs boxing career. When he was good, he was awesome. And when he was bad, it was brutal. And the cop tells this story of this fight that we get to see where the Swede is just getting pummeled by this guy. I mean, this movie is very violent, we should say. There's a lot of violence. As in the 60s version. He's just getting pummeled by this guy. And they're like, why isn't he hitting him with his right hand? Why isn't he using his right hand at all? And we learn after the fight, his right hand is broken to bits.
Right.
It is just completely shattered and is absolutely useless. So his boxing days are over. And what can he possibly do? So he kind of falls into a life of crime. He's still buddies with this cop.
Right. But also,
go ahead.
Sorry. But there was, so Hemingway had set this in Chicago, Illinois originally. And this is in the 1920s where the mafia was very out in the open, pretty much doing business with politicians and all over the place. They were also really involved in boxing. It's easier to control boxing than it is a baseball game or anything else. And it's just so there were people that he kind of knew on the fringes, and so once he wasn't a boxer anymore.
Okay, you're not a boxer, but you're still a tough guy.
Right.
We can always use a tough guy.
Who can always?
And so exactly. He slowly starts getting sucked into this criminal underworld, as Margos said, during kind of Prohibition era. Although I think it might be later in the film version. Anyway, so he and his cop friend, they kind of keep tabs on each other, you know. Burt Lancaster doesn't get into too much trouble, but somewhere along the way, when he's still dating the woman who eventually the cop marries, he gets invited to this party by some of these thugs, right? And his girlfriend at the time, who eventually marries the cop, is like, I don't know about these people. What are we doing mixing up with these folks? Like, and he's like, what kind of future do I have? I need to really start, making doing some networking, as we would say today.
Yes.
And so they go into this party. It's at a very fancy home, and we learn it belongs to a very well-known mobster who is actually in jail at the time. So the mobster is not there, but his girlfriend is, and she is the absolutely, as we've already said, breathtaking, immaculately lit Ava Gardner and Burt Lancaster, and he's such a good actor. Like, the moment he sees her, like, he is finished. It's over. And his girlfriend's like, okay, I guess we're done here. And she leaves.
The more I know of love, the less I know.
Here's your drink, lady.
The more I give to
He
love,
said, here's your drink, lady.
the more I owe.
Thank you very much. Sit down.
Me?
Nice apartment.
Big Jim likes to live well.
Big Jim?
Yeah, Colfax.
He's not here tonight?
Tonight? No, ma'am. Or last night, not tomorrow night, not for a lot of nights. Big Jim has his time all booked up.
Jim's out of town, Miss Armand.
A heartbreak or two. The more I know of love.
And he is now mixed up with this mobster's girlfriend, and he is now all in. He is part of this whole mob world because he's just completely fallen for Ava Gardner. He's just completely head over heels.
He also went to jail. He stole some jewelry that she's wearing because
she stole the jewelry, though.
Right. Oh, so he takes the fall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I watched this trailer, everybody. I'm telling you, I'm sorry.
It's very confusing.
It's a very confusing plot. I'm getting this in the first time.
So there's like a local hangout diner. The cop were to understand, like, he kind of makes this rounds of the diner just to show these criminals, like, don't forget, I'm keeping an eye on you. And so he's like, oh, hey, Whitey, just keep your nose clean. And hey, Mr. Smith, don't forget, I still remember such and such, So he's making his little rounds, and he sees Ava Gardner is wearing this very nice brooch. And then seconds later, she is no longer wearing the very nice brooch. And there's a platter of, food being taken away. He stops the waiter. He digs in the food, and there's the brooch. And so he's going to arrest her for stealing this jewelry. And Burt Lancaster, because he's a sucker for Ava Gardner, he swoops in and he's like, leave her alone. I stole it. And his friend's like, dude,
what are you doing?
Come on.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I don't want to put you in jail. He's like, put me in jail. So he goes to jail for like 3 years. So then we get a little bit of his time in jail. We learn that he's in jail with this other guy. Then the insurance investigator tracks down the guy that was in jail with the Swede. So we're meeting all of these people that are part of the story as the flashback is going on. And the cellmate gives him some more detail about, like, this guy was so in love with this woman. You have no idea that he was a good guy. And I don't think he did what he said he did. And we learn from the cellmate that after the Swede gets out of jail, the mobster, whose girlfriend is Ava Gardner, the mobster invites both the Swede and his former cellmate and some other men to do this heist. And the insurance investigator's like, heist, you say? What's that about? And they say, oh, yes, it was this heist about robbing the payroll at this hat factory. And the insurance investigator's like, hang on a minute. That was that was one of our clients. We had to pay out a whole ton of money because of that heist. And you mean, so this is not just about a $2,500 little, why did he give $2,500 to the maid? This is now $250,000 in 1947 that this insurance company lost. And he now has there's a possibility of recouping this for his bosses. So his bosses are now like, okay, all right, well, you keep on with your little investigation of this boxer. Let's see where this goes.
And it's done with one camera, apparently, or was done in one take.
How?
I don't know how they did this, but the scene where they're robbing the place, so well done.
So realistic.
Very much so. They have like scarves around their faces and then they get out and then they go into separate cars and there's a cop trying to shoot one of them and they shot him. They get out and they shoot him back and then he's injured. But they kind of swoop in, take this money and swoop out. And as she says, it's $250,000 and this is from 1947. It's millions now, in today's dollars. So this whole, it's like 4 guys and Kitty have this money now. And the way that they know that the Swede, they find a scarf and it has a Irish symbolism on it.
Yeah.
And
it has the harp.
The harp. I don't remember the name for that, but but he's wearing so that was his. But they said, oh yeah, well he always wore that, or that's one of the things he had. But then, so they go to, the gang has this money, and then the house burns down.
Okay, so this is where it gets even more confusing.
Yes,
so
this is why I had to keep watching it.
Okay, so the plan is we're going to take the money, everybody goes separate ways, and then we will reconvene and divvy up the dough at this halfway house at a particular time, at midnight, I believe it is. But they don't go to we don't see them go to the halfway house. They go to this farm instead. And you're like, why are they all at this farm? And everybody is there except Burt Lancaster. And they're dividing up the money amongst themselves, whoever's left. And then all of a sudden, Burt Lancaster comes up out of nowhere. And he's like, you're not going to screw me out of this money, basically. And he shoots his way out, gets all of the money. And I don't remember if he leaves with Kitty or we don't see her till later. Anyway, but he gets all the money and he vamooses with the money. He goes to... We later find out the hotel where the maid saved him from jumping out of the window, right? So he goes to the hotel, he rendezvous with Kitty there, and then Kitty absconds with all the money. Although he's more upset about her leaving than the money, but anyway, she takes
it's a lot he's losing.
He's lost a lot. Yeah. It's not a good day for the Swede.
He's having a bad day.
And we find out later, but we don't know why. When it happens, you, the audience, you're like, wait, what? Why are we here? Why did that? We find out that the reason that everybody moved the rendezvous point to the farm was because the halfway house burned down. And we only know this from Kitty. Kitty tells I forget who she tells. Maybe, I don't remember if it's the cops or the insurance at this point. Anyway, Kitty's story is the halfway house burned down, and so everybody decided to go to the farm. And Burt Lancaster's character just didn't happen to be around, so he didn't get that news. And you're like, okay. Then you come to find out that Kitty was the one who goes and tells everybody that the halfway house is burned down and that they should rendezvous at the farm. She has told everybody but Burt Lancaster. She deliberately tells him way after everybody else so that they will already be at the farm when he gets there. So you're like, what is this woman's deal? Why doesn't she just want to live the rest of her life with Burt Lancaster and $250,000?
I would.
What's that about? I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Reardon, I'd like you to believe something. I hated my life. Only I wasn't strong enough to get away from it. All I could do was dream of some big payoff that would let me quit the whole racket. The Swede was my chance to make my dream come true. If I could only be alone with him for a few hours. But Colfax was always there. I thought it was hopeless. And then suddenly my chance came.
You mean the burning down of the halfway house?
Colfax sent me to tell the others what had happened, and that they were to meet at the farmer's instead. I went to Blinky Franklin first, and then to Dum Dum. I saved the Swede till last. It was nearly 2 in the morning when I got there.
Kitty. What's up?
I'm taking my life in my hands coming to you like this, but I just couldn't stand by. Not after what you did for me that time in Philly.
Forget that. Why are you here now?
Colfax thinks I'm on my way to New York. He's meeting me there tomorrow. But I just had to come to you, Swede, and tell you.
Tell me what?
They're planning to double-cross you.
Who is?
Colfax and the others. They don't intend for you ever to get a smell of the money from tomorrow's job.
How do you know that?
Colfax sprung it tonight on Dum Dum and Blinky right after you left. First, he called your names and said dirty things about you. And then he sprung it. What if they were not to go to the halfway house after the robbery? You'd go there, but they'd be someplace else, and so would the money.
And so this insurance agent is like, and that's his whole MO is he's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. I need to find out what that's about. How can I make it make sense? He's tracking down the other members of the gang. Colfax, who was the mastermind, who, Kitty's boyfriend, he had been to prison. He's come out of prison. He is now a quote unquote legitimate businessman who runs a construction company, as legitimate businessmen do. And
like Tony Soprano runs
that.
Yes.
Real estate development.
Yeah.
So when the insurance investigator comes to him, he's like, "Why would I want to screw up what I got going on now? I'm like, I'm straight now. Don't leave me alone." And they're like, "No, okay." And one of the other gang members is
Dum Dum
is dying. He's Blinky. He gets picked up for something or other. He's in a hospital. He wants to make a confession, and when they show up, he's delirious. Like in his mind, he is back on the day of the heist, and he's taking them like through like, oh, that's when we decided. Yeah, we're not going to you hear him say, "Oh, we're not going to the halfway house. We're going to go see the farmer. We're going to go to the farmhouse." And so that's how they find out about that. And that's how we kind of find out how the events have played out at the farmhouse. So the investigator puts it together that the gang all thinks that Burt Lancaster has $250,000. And that's probably why he thinks that's probably why the killers were sent to kill him. So he figures, well, now that the Swede is dead, somebody's going to come looking for that $250,000 in this boarding house, because of course they are. So he lies in wait. He tells the cop, he's in cahoots with the cop the whole time. He tells the cop, like, get some cops, surround the place, because we know somebody's going to show up and they're going to try to look for this money. Sure enough, another member of the gang, Dum Dum, shows up. I don't know why he's called Dum Dum, but they all have names like Blinky and Dum Dum and the Swede, because film noir. Dum Dum shows up. He's like ripping up the mattress. So that tells the insurance guy, like, oh, he doesn't really know what's going on either. He actually thinks that the Swede is the one that has the money. Why would he think that? Who would tell them that? There's only one person who would tell them that, and that's Kitty. So the cops get Dum Dum. The walls are closing in on Kitty. And now this is the part where I totally lose the plot, Margot, and maybe you can help me out here. Because somewhere along the line, and I went back and I tried to find it, and maybe it went over my head. Somehow Reardon, the insurance investigator, he figures out, he catches up with Kitty. He does find Kitty.
Right.
And Kitty, he's like, Kitty, look, I know you've got the money. I'm investigating that case now, and as well as the death of the Swede. So, I know that you're the one who has the money. And she says, I don't want any trouble. I'm married now. Like, my husband doesn't know anything about my past. Please don't mess this up for me. I'll try to get together a lot of money back so you can pay back the insurance about the payroll scam. But please don't ruin this for me. She's like, I'll go with you, but I just need to go powder my nose. Oldest line in the book. I just need to go powder my nose. And of course she takes a powder.
Let's get out of here, Mr. Reardon. I'm nervous.
Why do you want to go?
Doesn't matter. Take me back to your hotel with you. I'll powder my nose.
I'll wait for you.
Don't go away.
So something about that exchange, and I don't know what, something about that exchange leads Reardon, the investigator, to put two and two together and realize that Kitty and Colfax, the mastermind of the heist, they have been secretly married the whole time. I don't know how he came to that conclusion. How did he figure that out?
I don't know.
Missed it. I don't know either.
It confused me too, because I'm like, wait a minute, they're
I
married
got very
now?
confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so somehow something she tips it off to him, and I'm dense. I missed it, but he figures out Kitty, the husband, the legitimate husband that Kitty is talking about, is actually Colfax, and has been all along. So now he goes to the cops. He's like, Colfax is our guy. Kitty took the money. She played the Swede for a fool. Now she and Colfax are living off of this $250,000. Let's go track him down. They arrive at Colfax's house, very, very fancy house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing
and
well.
They have a shootout and they shoot Colfax. He's dying. And Kitty comes running in because, of course she does. So she's there. She comes running in and she's begging, spoiler alert, she's begging her husband because she knows,
Kitty is innocent.
Kitty is innocent.
Just
tell
say
the
Kitty
police
is
that
innocent.
all
Yes.
you have to say, because you're dying and they'll take your deathbed confession. Tell them I'm innocent and I'll be fine and everything will be cool. And he just he does everything but do the little motion of locking his mouth up with the key and throwing it away.
He asks for a cigarette. He's dying. He is dying.
Dum-Dum tipped me. He said Kitty brought him word at midnight about the changed meeting place. The halfway house didn't burn down till nearly 3 in the morning. That meant Kitty had a partner. And who could he be but you?
Is this your woman?
Yeah. Hello, Kitty.
We got her outside.
How bad is he?
The ambulance is on its way.
It's gonna be a little late. I guess our luck's run out, Kitty. You didn't have anything on her before now, did you?
No, but I had to make you think so. And I was sure you'd try to knock me off before I could find out Kitty was your wife.
I knew that, too.
Married people can't testify against each other. Otherwise, I'd have tried playing you off one against the other, instead of making myself a target for those gunmen of yours.
Give me a cigarette, will you?
What I don't get is why you sent those 2 killers to blast the Swede. He wasn't doing you any harm there in Brentwood. Why didn't you let well enough alone?
I couldn't. Suppose one of the gang ran into him, same as I did. They were after the money. You'd have had a chance to tell his story, and that would have been the end of it. They knew Kitty and I were married. They'd have seen through the frame-up. Anyhow, if I hadn't had him knocked off, he'd have wondered why and begun thinking.
Jim! Jim! Tell him I didn't know anything. Jim, listen to me. You can save me. Jim, do you hear me? Tell them I didn't know those gunmen were coming. Say, Kitty is innocent. I swear, Kitty is innocent. Say it, Jim. Say it. It'll save me if you do.
Don't ask a dying man to lie his soul into hell.
Kitty is innocent. I swear, Kitty is innocent.
It's no use, Kitty. Your would-be fall guy is dead.
Come back, Jim. Tell them. Come back. Save me. Jim. Kitty is innocent. I swear. Kitty is innocent. Kitty is innocent. I swear. Kitty is innocent. Kitty is innocent.
There, she says, "What do I do?" And like, give him a cigarette. He's dying on the steps. Dum-Dum's shot. You know, everyone is, and so she gives him a cigarette. He's just puffing some smoke, and he's like figuring in his mind, like, "Oh, she's going to double cross me now." Like, yeah.
He realizes finally, like, what he's been dealing with this whole time.
Right. So as he's dying, Ava Gardner is just on top of him, and she's holding him. She's like, "Please, please, tell them Kitty is innocent. Tell them Kitty is innocent. Please, please, please." But because even though this is dark and twisted, we still have the Hays Code, and nobody can get away with something bad. So instead of him saying, "Oh, Kitty's innocent, please don't," and then croaking, he just dies. And so she's going to be taken away because
she's going to get her comeuppance finally.
Right.
Finally. And then I love the end too, because the sort of epilogue of it is, you know, here this Reardon, he has been he gets shot at, he gets kicked in the head by Dum-Dum when he's fighting with Dum-Dum. Like he's really put his life on the line and chasing down this $250,000 that his company has lost. And what's the upshot? He goes to his boss and is like, "I did it." And the boss is like, "Yeah, great. Good for you."
Yeah.
So I guess we won't be raising our insurance rates next year because you solved this one case. It's like the like Nancy Pelosi slow clap. And it's just so well written. And again, none of that is in the story. Nothing beyond Nick going to the Swede, saying these killers are coming, and him saying, "Thanks for telling me, buddy. Get out of here." That's where Hemingway leaves off, and all of the rest of it is the work of the screenwriters in putting together a fantastic. Again, it's very hard to keep up with the twists and turns, but it is the dialogue is awesome. The acting is super good.
I'm kind of shocked the actors weren't nominated. So it's a 1947 Oscars.
Good.
They're really good, especially I would say that the supporting characters are really
absolutely. The women, in particular, the maid at the hotel, she's phenomenal. The cop's wife who used to date the Swede,
yes,
I love her. And then of course Ava Gardner is like, she's so evil. She's playing, you see her playing these men, these very powerful men. And
Edmond O'Brien is doing everything an actor's going to do in a movie, everything, you know, and so it was nominated
for funny. There's moments of levity. It's brilliant.
At the right times. There's really good music. Ava Gardner sings, and she's got a great voice. It was nominated for Best Director, Best Film Editing, and the editing in this movie is
a masterpiece. Absolutely.
Really, really strong. Best Music, Milos Rovsva. Let's say that. And Best Adapted Screenplay. And John Huston didn't get credit for that. It didn't win any of those, but it is one of the top in the AFI's like top thrillers and film noirs. And it's really, really great. I wish I'd seen this before, but no better time than the present, I guess. I mean, I'm glad.
It's just such it is such a beautiful work of art. Everything about it is right. I mean, there's not a single, as you say, not a single character actor. There's not anybody who's like extra for no reason.
No false notes anywhere.
Everybody,
it feels contemporary.
Everybody's so great. It does. Yeah. It totally does. And I just think to read that story, which is a great book. I mean, the story is a great story by Hemingway, and to take it in that direction and to imagine like what would lead this character to this point where he's literally not even bothering to get up out of bed to be murdered. What would lead a man to that point, and the exploration of that, it's just brilliant. And I love, the arc of the Swede, from being this boxer, like not very bright, doesn't really understand why his boxing career is over, even though his hand is totally
shattered.
Your
hand, dude. It's like, it's not, they can't fix that. This is 1946. You're a
paperweight.
Yeah, exactly. There's no steroid shots or anything that are going to help you with this.
No. And to have him like evolve into a criminal who then is a sucker for this woman, and and so on and so on, and then to evolve further to have the self-awareness of, I'm not going to run from my bad choices at the very end.
You see why he's so tired that he's just the jig is up.
It's such a brilliant performance. And he's so good.
He's so great. And I didn't realize looking at his biography, like how many movies he produced. He had his own production company. I mean, just
very smart fellow. Yeah.
Very, very smart and very political. And he was one of the first celebrities to talk about AIDS. He read Rock Hudson's letter when Rock Hudson passed away. He's just a really amazing person. And this was really, really fun. And it's his first, I think he's one of the first stars on the Walk of Fame, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's what I read somewhere. I
still remember hearing something like that. Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. It's just, there's so much here. And there's so many writers. The band The Killers said they get their name from this movie because they're big fans of this movie. I get it.
I get it too. It's awesome.
I want to see it again.
Good.
I really enjoyed it.
It does. It bears multiple viewings for sure, because it's such a masterpiece that you can watch it. Like I said, you could watch it with the sound off and just look at the lighting and the costumes and the blocking and the physicality. It is very violent. Again, it's super, super violent. But the choreography of it's good.
It's really well done.
It's so good. I'm just looking at Burt Lancaster's extremely lengthy filmography. I forgot he was in All My Sons. I mean, just the things that he's so good.
Yeah, he plays Doc in Field of Dreams. That's one of his last roles, and that's why I think a lot of people know him. He was in a lot of movies with Kirk Douglas, and it turns out they really weren't that great of friends. They just worked well together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They did.
Well, that surprises
I'm
me
surprised
they have such good chemistry.
Yeah, he's like, nah, not so much. And then he even admits that he was a super grumpy person on set. He complained about everything, but everybody still loved him. Lived a big life.
He was in one of my favorite Burt Lancaster movies, and I might have talked about it when we talked about Field of Dreams, but he was in this movie called The Train.
I've never seen
with
that.
My favorite movie star of all time, Jean Moreau, and it was a movie about. It takes place during World War II, and it was a movie about the Nazis stealing of art from Jewish owners in Europe, like masterpieces like Van Gogh and all the stuff that, and it's about a train full of artwork. And them trying to stop the Nazis. It's a great film. He's just wonderful.
I love A Sweet Smell of Success. I've seen that movie.
And Elmer Gantry.
Oh, yes.
And
we'll definitely do all those, by the way. They're on the list.
On and on and on.
Yes, they're all on the list.
But in the 60s, there's a remake. We've got John Cassavetes. We've got Lee Marvin.
Angie Dickinson.
Ronald Reagan plays the criminal mastermind. Angie Dickinson plays the Kitty character. In this version, he's not a boxer. He's a race car driver. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that, which you could totally take it that way, although the source material specifically says that he was a boxer, he could be anything. In the 60s one, he's a race car driver. And so he's enlisted as the getaway man in the heist. Right. Yeah. And he can't race anymore because he's had so many crashes. It's a very kind of similar thing. The other big difference is that in the 60s version, the killers themselves are major characters, if not the main characters. Whereas what's notable about the movie that we just talked about with Burt Lancaster, these killers, we don't even really learn their names. In the story, we know their names. It's Alan, I forget what the other one's name is. But it doesn't really matter because they only come in to kill people.
Max.
They're
William
not
Conrad.
Max and Al. Yeah. And they never, they're not like part of the story. And in fact, that's in both the source material and in the 40s movie, they both say like, we don't know anything about the Swede. He never did anything to us, but it's our job to kill him. So we're going to kill him. Whereas in the 60s one, they are a much more active part of the story is my understanding. I didn't watch the whole thing. I only watched some of it. It's Ronald Reagan's last major movie before he became governor of California. I can't say that without sighing. Sorry. I have feelings about that. So it's good. It's good too. But it's another like reimagining of what would lead to the circumstances of this story. And I think it's told in the 60s. So they've updated it, and it could take place at any time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not married to the 20s. I think it looks also like it's a very good movie. But this one I was blown away.
Yeah.
Truly, I was not expecting it to be anywhere this level. I think it might be the best noir film I've ever seen.
It's one of my favorites. It's one of my new favorites. I'm going to watch it again so I can figure it out more. But I still loved it. And
I still don't. I'm dying to know, like, what I'm sure I missed something, whatever it was that tipped him off. But I don't know what it is yet. Book or movie?
I'm gonna take movie.
Same.
Even though I loved the short story, and
loved
we will
it.
definitely be talking about Ernest Hemingway in the future. It's one of those that it popped in my head. I'm like, oh my god, why haven't we done this? So we're gonna do it definitely in the future. And it's gonna be movie for me. What about you?
Oh, also totally movie. I was so impressed by the imaginative way they came up with telling what led up to the events of that night. I just thought it was so good, and so well performed by everybody. So well shot, just everything. Every single piece of this production is just the best, the best. So I'm also very excited. I cannot wait for next week. As we say, we will consider any movie that has been adapted from any literary source. It doesn't have to be a novel. It could be a short story. It could be a nonfiction piece of magazine journalism, like Saturday Night Fever,
right?
Or Urban Cowboy. Those are both magazine, or American Gangster. These are magazine articles they were journalistic pieces that were adapted into films that were fictionalized.
All of those are on our Patreon page, by the way, if you want to hear them.
We will even consider, as we will be doing next week, movies that have been adapted from songs. We've had some really fun movies that have been adapted from songs in the past. We had Harper Valley PTA, and we had Jolene, and what else did we do? I feel like
Yellow
there's another one that we did.
Submarine.
Oh, Yellow Submarine. So next week we're going to be doing, I think, one of the best American songs ever written. It is a song that when you hear it, it just haunts you. You're like, why? But what happened? What were they doing up there? Why doesn't anybody care? Why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And we're going to be talking about Pass the Biscuits, Please. Oh, to Billy Joe.
All these like songwriters that did whole stories around a thing. Jerry Rafferty. There's like certain people that Dolly Parton.
And Dolly Parton is
yeah. Willie Nelson. I mean, he's had some of those. I mean, there's Kenny Rogers. We'll definitely talk about Kenny Rogers too, because he's also done some songs that are about a whole,
and that have turned into movies.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Ode to Billy Joe was on HBO when I was a kid. We were one of those HBO test families.
Yes, remember that?
Yes. And so it was like The Towering Inferno, Audrey Rose, and the Ode to Billy Joe.
So back in the day, for those of you who are too young to remember,
we're not millennials.
We did not have HBO. There were very few families. Like, that's a very special thing Margot's talking about, that they had HBO. There were just very, very few families. If you knew an HBO family, you were so lucky. But the thing was, they would have, like, the way HBO worked, because it was home box office, right? And they would show movies, and it would be like 5 or 6 movies a month?
Yes.
I want to say, and you'd get a little guide, you get a little pamphlet to tell you what that month's movies, and there'd be like a kid's selection, a musical, a comedy, a drama, and 1 or 2 other things. And they would show, and the channel was just showing those movies over and over and over again on a loop for a whole dang month. So if I knew that my friend Margot had HBO and that they were showing Ode to Billy Joe, and I had a crush on Robbie Benson, I would I'd be like, oh, I could go over on Thursday and we can watch Ode to Billy Joe, because it would be playing.
Yeah, it would be in the middle of the afternoon too. Like that was the whole thing. Was like you could watch these movies. This is before
at different times of the week, at different times of the day, and you would get to see. So what? You can't go to the movies on a Saturday night. You can still see that movie that you love on Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Right.
Twice in this month. That it's going to show at Tuesday at 10 a.m. So you could watch it over and over again. Yeah, this is totally. I remember this being on HBO.
It was a big deal. So it's the interpretation of the song. It's Robbie Benson, Glynis O'Connor, I think. Is that her name? Is she the co-star?
I think so.
I saw this. It was streaming on Prime last summer, and that's where I remember thinking like, "Oh, we should cover this," because this is like, there's a lot going on here. It's a very interesting. It's all very 70s. This is but it's perfect for like midsummer. We're planning out our other stuff we're going to cover in the future, but we thought let's do something really kind of fun and different. So that's going to be our next one, Ode to Billy Joe. It's streaming for rent everywhere, and the song is very easy to get. The lyrics and it's a really fun backstory. The singer-songwriter.
Yes.
It's really interesting. So if you've got some ideas for us, please reach out. All those places I mentioned at the top of the show. Once again, our email is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, let us know. If you want to sign up for our Patreon, that would be amazing. Please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. That would be really cool too. Or just tell a friend about the show. It helps us find our people. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, as long as that still exists, at Brooklyn Margot. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads, for my site, and for Instagram. And then I'm also on TikTok at my name, Margot Donahue, where I put clips of the movies that we're doing. Check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad,